Welcome to this week's edition of the Green Wisdom Health Show. I'm Janet Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Lewis.
And we are going to educate you a little bit today about heartburn, indigestion, and misery on me. And for those of you that are not familiar with who we do low-cost lab work all across the United States so that we are not guessing about what's going on with your health issues. And then we put you on pharmaceutical-grade supplements, which we're going to address a little bit of those supplement issues at the end of this show. And we keep you from buying the wrong things at the health food stores and getting a better grade quality of product that is based on your lab work and not just guessing. So with that, Dr. Lewis, we've had many questions about heartburn and indigestion, and apparently that's a big deal. They apparently give you a lot of medications for it and over-the-counter medications. So we're going to help you decide where the indigestion or heartburn could be coming from. Is there something you can do about it naturally? And what is going on with it? So would you please enlighten us as only you can do?
The pressure's on again. One thing you can do is you can always go on WebMD, because it's like one of those choose-your-own-adventure books where the result is always death, like being pushed off the cliff. Or you could do something different. Sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole already. Indigestion can be a lot of things. And I do tell people, I'm a chiropractor and I look at things from a structure function point of view. And it's always a good idea to see a GI doc, because it can be something super serious like pancreatic cancer or stomach cancer, esophageal cancer. It is good to get a medical opinion. We do have the best medical profession on earth. I think one of the biggest issues we have is too many toxins and not enough nutrients. And I know that's true because I read all the research and I'm blessed with a good memory. Thank goodness for that. So the indigestion can be a symptom that's stomach or the intestines, and it can be, a problem there. It can be just the disorder all by itself. Food allergies, I think, is a major contributing factor. Intolerances, such as lactose intolerance, can cause indigestion, although there are many, many, many intolerances, and now I'm studying this whole brand new thing. There's a way big difference between food allergies and food sensitivities, and holy cow, the differences, the things I've learned recently. We are never who we were last week, last year, 10 years ago. We're just constantly evolving, and I'm just scared to death that it's like, I'm missing something, so I have to read, study, discern the truth from the smoke, mirrors, and bull that they do put out there quite a bit. One of the major contributing factors, the things that we're most sensitive or allergic to, is the high complex carbohydrates, grains, and legumes. There's also other studies that say, well, you kind of need to soak that, and nature put in its own self-protective mechanism by, you've got to soak the grain for a long time before it begins to sprout. And that's why if you soak your beans before you cook them, it creates a lot less flatulence. For those of you that don't know what flatulence is, that's what your husband does and tries to hold you under the sheet, and he thinks that's funny, although I think it's not really appropriate. Grains, because they're genetically modified. I'm telling you, folks, that's a real problem. And anytime you can get organic or non-genetically modified, you need to do it. I don't care what it costs, because I was talking to a guy the other day, a very, very incredibly intelligent man. And there was quite a few people that did tests with this new lab that can figure out the real differences between food allergies and intolerances way beyond a lot of these lab companies that say they're doing it, which I think is a lot of smoke and mirrors. But he said, well, there was 3 people that did not have a gluten issue. He was one of them, and there was 2 others. Well, he was raised in Mexico. The other guy was raised in Peru, and then the third guy was raised in Cuba, because they don't have the genetically modified crops. And I don't care what some of my Facebook friends say. They say, well, GMOs are fine, and I spray my fence line with glyphosate. It's like, well, you were a strange child, now you're a stranger adult. Just because it doesn't kill you right on the spot doesn't mean it's not bad for you. I'm telling you, GMOs are killing us. That's why we have more problems. We have more, I hate to say autism, but that's one of the factors there. We have more autoimmune diseases, and it's getting more common, but it's getting younger and younger because these kids are being born from mothers that already had their genetics messed up by the GMOs or their immune system also. So then it creates bad bacteria because it kills the good bacteria, and that's why I tell people it's really hard to get probiotics to where they really and truly colonize in the gut. So the bacteria changes, then you get SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. The gut then produces toxins. Now these toxins will damage the mucosal lining, and that's what you would call leaky gut. Recent test makes Dr. Lewis think, holy crap, the rules apply to me too. So I've got to give up gluten. I knew what my limits were. Well, guess what? You can't fix yourself. So folks, don't think you can get information and fix yourself, because Dr. Lewis, as brilliant as I am, I'm not smart enough to fix myself. So thank God for Janet.
It's interesting you talk about these tests, which you and I both ran. The one thing that was on this, it's called a wheat zoomer test. It actually has the ability, because we're all probably going to fail it, and we know we're full of gluten.
I thought she was going to say we're full of something else.
Because of the bad crops, like you said. But it also has a part of a test that's called a fusion SNP, where it shows you if you're headed towards celiac disease from having too much gluten. And incredibly, it can be, a slight amount, a moderate amount, or a high amount, and you have celiac disease, which is a horrible thing to have. And
that's where your GI doc comes in to diagnose this stuff.
The good news about this test is it can show you headed that way and say, hey, if you don't stop eating gluten, you will have celiac disease. And if you stop it, you can actually start reversing it. So we haven't found any other test out there like it that actually can tell you that you're headed that way, and you stopping the gluten could actually reverse it and cause you to not have celiac. So that's pretty exciting. And I know y'all are all going to say, well, when is this coming on the on the actual website so we can order it? We're still working out a couple of the bugs on it. And then we've got to build those on the back of the website. We're trying to figure out what you guys would be interested in as far as packages, and we're trying to keep the cost low. So we will have those. They are incredible. And like I said, stay tuned, because they have been more than worth the money that we spend on it to find out information.
And they do a lot for a very, very relatively small amount. Yes, folks, I've had these tests with other labs, and again, I'm not impressed. And I know some people say, well, you need this. I said, yeah, I know, but I want to make sure it's real. One of these days I'll get on the podcast and talk about hair analysis and how crazy they are different with the same hair sample, and for the third time. So I don't have any faith in them. So you hair analysis companies, if you're listening, hey, prove me wrong. So, one of the things that I tell people, or sometimes people come in and tell me, they say, well, I drink apple cider vinegar and the heartburn goes away. Well, yes, it's a little bit acid. If you can drink apple cider vinegar and make you feel better, for God's sake, you need digestive enzymes and probably just straight hydrochloric acid with betaine. And hydrochloric acid is trimethyl. And, well, when you say trimethyl, that means it's a methylizer. That means a cleanser. So don't be afraid to take digestive enzymes and or hydrochloric acid with pepsin. So, yeah, apple cider vinegar is a good thing, but I think it's super, super simplistic.
What about the drugs they give you for these things? When you say I have heartburn, are those really curing the issue, or what exactly is happening with the drug part of it?
What's really amazing, folks, is that Janet and I work so well together because we have two completely different set of notes, and she's just almost psychic in the things that she asks because I'm there in my completely different set of notes. So she's psychic, or sometimes psychotic. But that's
I actually didn't even read a note. I was just asking a question.
Okay, so she was psychic or psychotic. Again, I'm a chiropractor. I'm not against drugs. I'm against the need for having to use drugs. They put my mother on some drugs once upon a time. My sister called me and says, my mother's sitting there looking in the mirror talking to somebody else. She's urinating freely. She's constipated, cannot poop. And she's making coffee with no coffee and no water, and she's trying to turn the stove on and can't get it turned on. Thank God there was a safety device because it was gas. And I said, oh, good Lord, I'm booked up. I said, never mind, I'll cancel the whole day. And I went to see my mother, and they'd put her on some antacid drugs to make her feel better. And I'm not against that, but it lowered her B12 so much she got dementia. And then they put her on, because she got that dementia and had some brain issues from that. And they didn't even start small. They hit her with huge dose. And then they put her on a well-known antidepressive drug. And I went to see my mother, and I tried to figure out what was going on. I got her antidepressive drug, and I gave it to another sister. I said, here, you take this crap. My mother's not going to take this. And I gave her MD the research on B12, said, please start giving my mama B12 shots. And she wouldn't do it, even with the research. I don't know why. So I gave my mother massive doses of sublingual and oral B12. You have to go way beyond the RDA, because there's always, or almost always, an absorption problem. And within about 3 weeks, my mother knew who she was looking at in the mirror. She could make coffee. I mean, her mind came back within about 3 weeks, all because we gave her B12. Of course, it had the B6 and the B1, It's very, very important. And you think we don't have nutrient deficiencies? You're crazy, because, we've known in America that our soils were depleted since the early 1900s, depleted of the minerals, which helps make the vitamins. So back to the drug point. And again, I told my mother, I said, well, if it gives you that much relief, go ahead and take it, but you have to take digestive enzymes. That sounds like a broken record. One of the real problems I see is some of the antacids are aluminum-based. Well, Jesus, we know aluminum can contribute to Alzheimer's and all kinds of other things. Sometimes they have calcium carbonate. Well, that's like licking on a limestone rock. And then if you have calcium carbonate and drop the acid level in your stomach, the stomach says, oh my God, it's too low, and it has an acid rebound, and you end up with it worse than it was before. And guess what aluminum and calcium carbonate can do? Cause constipation.
Interesting. When they give you those drugs, don't they tell you that you have too much stomach acid, and that's why you need to take it?
Yeah, and most of the time, unless they really, really test it, it's really too low, and that's why the judicious use of betaine hydrochloric acid is very important. We can tell within 6 pills and 3 meals whether you really need it or not. But again, if you can take apple cider vinegar and make you feel better in that regard, you need the betaine.
Or you can just do digestive essentials,
that's easier and smarter.
Yeah, most everybody needs it. And on lab, when you're looking at lab, because if you don't know what you need, on the metabolic panel, we're looking at your globulin. Your globulin optimally should be about a 2.7 or 2.8. And many times we see people with it at a 3.0, 3.1, but you're going, well, that isn't very far off. Well, on lab, it's hugely off.
Sometimes 1/10 of a point is a big deal. Sometimes it's not, depending on what you're measuring.
Yeah, and if you got it that bad, then you've got a lot of burping, belching, gas.
And misery on me, and your husband's flapping the sheets trying to gross you out at night.
Yeah, and probably not going to the bathroom well. So, and you're having all this burping, belching stuff. So, that's a good indicator that you may need the digestive enzymes. And then on the chloride end, if it's really low, that tells you actually don't have enough hydrochloric acid in the gut, and that's where Dr. Lewis was talking about doing betaine.
There was an interesting study I read one time. So I'm going to stir the pot. It's from Johns Hopkins, and there's some really incredible research comes out of there. I have quite a few of them archived here. It said that you can have a decreased sexual ability and or breast enlargement I'm talking about men, not women.
This has got to do with digestion and heartburn. I don't know where he comes up with this stuff. It always goes back to this. Okay, go ahead.
Objections overruled, counselor. I get to speak my mind. If you're a lawyer out there, sorry if I misuse your terms. It said decreased sexual ability or breast enlargement can result from prolonged excessive use of the heartburn medication Tagamet. So maybe your man boobs aren't because you're drinking the light beer, which is a bad thing. I can't drink beer anymore because of the gluten in it. I hadn't tried any gluten-free beers that I think are worth going back for the second one. Which, anyway, we'll fix your gut.
Okay. Some of your common causes of heartburn are laying down after eating. That it bothers you. Like I said, having low stomach acid. You're overweight. Which a lot
preaching to getting personal.
A lot of America is, even though you're looking around and thinking, hey, everybody looks like me, you are probably still overweight.
Go to China, you'll feel fat. At my 170-something pounds, I was the fat boy on the block.
Yeah, now when you're this thin, it's like, oh, you must have cancer because you're so thin. But honestly, you're supposed to weigh that. Overuse of ibuprofen, which a lot of people tell me they take that before they go to bed every night so they can sleep.
And it's really funny, since marrying Janet, I rarely ever take ibuprofen. But before Janet, I used to take those 250-count bottles like crazy. And yes, it boo-booed my stomach in a big way.
Sometimes having a hiatal hernia will actually cause heartburn, which I've seen Dr. Lewis actually help with the chiropractic adjustment.
Yeah, there's soft tissue manipulation for that. So, see your chiropractor for that one. It works wonders. Sometimes it's the level of H. pylori, and the problem is if you lower your hydrochloric acid or acid level in your stomach, then it can allow the H. pylori and other bad bugs grow. And then they can actually get into the bloodstream and start burrowing little holes into the arterial walls. So there's many reasons why you need to, think about this. And it can be, as heartburn can be, just a magnesium deficiency, which almost everybody has. Even our government, as brilliant as they are, says the average American only gets 40% of your daily requirement of magnesium.
And you talk about H. pylori. A lot of people don't even know if they have H. pylori, but one way you can tell if it might be H. pylori is if you're in the middle of that hurting like that and you drink a little bit of tea, any kind of tea, and it calms it down, or if you drink water and it makes it worse. So if it calms it down or the water makes it worse, it's generally H. pylori, and we do have products for that like GastroMend. And, and maybe we are to discuss some of the products that we have beside just digestive essentials that actually help calm down some of the heartburn. And some that you've probably not heard of. We've got a new one that it doesn't taste great, but it works like crazy. It's called Mastic Gum DGL.
Yeah, it tastes like dirt.
Well, it's cinnamon flavored dirt.
Well, they're lying about the cinnamon flavor.
But I mean, you can. It starts out good, but the ending doesn't taste great. But it really does work. They're little wafers, and you can chew them up, and the indigestion, heartburn is gone quickly. So if you don't want to take a medication, that's a great combination. Dr. Lewis, you might want to talk a little bit about the the GI support that we have. That is a powder. That's a powder.
I like powders, and it has the things in it, all kinds of different things that really helps. Some of it's DGL.
Big one's L-glutamine.
Yeah, glutamine's one of the amino acids. And I want to talk just a little bit, go down this rabbit hole, but it still really and truly is related. I was talking about H. pylori and different things they can burrow, and get into your arterial system and cause, little holes there. And the body, in its defense mechanism, plaques it with cholesterol. Cholesterol is not the booger bear it's meant to be. And I just loaned out my book, The Cholesterol Hoax, to another doctor. And I said, oh, dear Jesus, please bring it back. But I did it because his doctor got his cholesterol down to 126. And I told his wife, I said, you just doubled his risk of stroke. I think everybody, and I put instructions in this book for this other doctor to go get his coronary calcium score, because you can have the plaquing and it may be related to, bad digestion. I got a coronary calcium score, and, I've had a history of chest pain, which has nothing to do with my heart. And my report said your total calcium score is 6. Well, if it's a 400 to 1,000, you're about to have a heart attack within 2 or 3 years, according to the research. Basically, they said with a calcium score of 6, I've got as much calcium in my heart, coronary arteries, to be a toddler. Don't worry about it. And the reason I talk about that is because there's an amino acid that's called acetyl L-carnitine. And that's an incredible one. We actually stock that because it's so good. Some of the things it does, it's good for cognition, mood, and Alzheimer's disease. It's good for antiretroviral neuropathy, peripheral neuropathies. It's good for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and Fragile X syndrome. It's good for just straight depression. It's good for cardiovascular function. It's good for chemotherapy-induced neuropathy. Good Lord, we get all those people. They said, well, I have this neuropathy. I said, have you had chemo? Well, the first hint is they're growing their hair back out. And I said, yeah, I put you on acetyl L-carnitine and a few other things. And all of a sudden, it takes a little time, but they get well. It's been studied for HIV infection, to help prevent diabetic cataracts. Men's health, it can reverse infertility. I've given that, about 2 other things, to men that had sperm count that was deformed and weren't swimmers at all, and then all of a sudden their wife got pregnant in the next 3 to 6 months. It's good for Peyronie's disease. It's good for people that have alcohol and cirrhosis of the liver, alcoholism, and it just goes on and on and on. And I'm telling you, people that just take the acetyl L-carnitine and didn't link it to anything else, they notice a lot of other things get better. So yeah, bring me back out of that rabbit hole, and I'll get started down wherever you wanted me to go.
Well, I want to make sure we address the question that we had here last week that we did not get to, from Penny, which she would like to know about nitric oxide. Is it important to her health? She's got several parts of this question. Where do we find nitric oxide in the body? And what is the difference between nitrates and nitrites?
We get a lot of good posts from Penny, so please keep it up. Nitric oxide, let's start there. Nitric oxide is very, very important. A lot of men like L-arginine, another amino acid. I think I'm going to have to get deeper into the amino acids. They like that because it gives them a boost of energy. It helps testosterone. It helps the cardiovascular system. It helps circulation. And it helps with erections. And all these guys come in and say, well, do you have any of this? I said, yes, but citrulline works better. If you knew the difference between arginine, man, yeah, it gives you that big burst, but it's quick. If you take citrulline, it has a half-life in the body, and it lasts so much longer. Read between the lines there, men. And that's why we have citrulline in our blood pressure formula. It works so much better. And I'm not against arginine. It does work. But they both create nitric oxide. And what that does, it keeps the surface of the blood vessels really kind of smooth so the platelets don't bind, and decreases the chance of clots. Read into that. That's what that means. There are some research studies that said you can get too much nitric oxide in your body, so be careful there. That's why you go for professional advice, hopefully to Janet and me. It helps remove the oxidants, like you've heard, antioxidants like C and E. And vitamin C and E actually help stabilize the nitric oxide. So that's from L-arginine, but more importantly and longer lasting is from L-citrulline. Now to the question about nitrates and nitrites, one of them has, I think, 3 molecules of oxygen and the other one has 2. Again, I've told you several times I hated chemistry. I did have to pass it, though. They put the nitrates in the meat, to cure the meat because it gives it the pink or reddish color, which makes it more attractive. If you don't put it there, the meat turns brown, even though that may not be a bad thing. It's better looking if it's pink, at least in our subconscious mind. There's some people that said the nitrates and nitrites increase your risk of cancer, but I personally think that's questionable because if you have the other things that help with this, the changes where it gives off these oxygen molecules, like the C and the E, the antioxidants like our quercetin bromelain, I'm not sure that would increase your risk of cancer. But like I say, that's questionable. You can read WebMD and come to a horrible conclusion, or you can get on internet, get somebody's crazy opinion, or you can dig down into the real research. Nitrates come naturally. There's actually more of them in veggies, and the GI systems, it goes into the GI system, or from the GI system from your vegetables, and goes into the bloodstream, which is kind of antimicrobial, kill the bad booger bears like virus, yeast, fungus, bacteria. So I don't think it's a bad thing. They say avoid them, and again, I'm not sure that's really correct. So you be the own judge. And if people say, but I'm allergic to them. Well, maybe you need the digestive enzymes and the probiotics and a few other nutrients. And when your body's working correctly, people say, I don't know, but my allergies or sensitivities went away.
Yeah, and speaking of probiotics, do they have anything to do with making indigestion or heartburn or any of that stuff be less?
Many, many times, because it can overpower bad things like yeast, fungus, virus, and H. pylori. My favorite, and we've had about 20 different probiotics. We're trying to get them down to about 6 different choices, and we've got another one that's we call it ProBio Complete, and it's got all the good stuff. It's got the lactobacillus, different strains, and especially the salvarius, which starts in saliva, good for the mouth. It's got the bifidobacterium. It's got the streptococcus thermophilus, which is the good strep, not the bad one. It's got enough of the lactobacillus and the different bifidobacterium to be good for the gut, from small intestine to the colon. But
that one's wonderful because we have for many, many years carried the Innate, their 2014 or 5014. All the people out there listening that are taking that product now know that has been a staple of ours for many, many years. I actually am changing that product to the ProBio Complete based on us doing it because, we don't put anything in here unless we've done it. And between the 3 of us in here, we usually have a problem that warrants the use of one of those products to try.
And we do experiment with other people too.
Yes, and that ProBio Complete, the lady that told me about it said, it'll make you go to the bathroom, or if you don't have problems needing that, it won't make you go to the bathroom. And I thought, how could one probiotic do that? And it's actually in clinical research trials. It is such a big deal.
But it's a big deal.
Right. It is a big deal that it's in research trials. And she was absolutely right. That is a phenomenal probiotic. And people are going to say, oh, but it's got to stay refrigerated. Honestly, if you're going to take it within 18 months, it does not have to stay refrigerated. Some
of these are not that fragile. If you forget it in your fridge, put it by your bed, take 1 or 2 before you go to bed, because that's when you've got the least competition. Not taking in some of the toxins like genetically modified foods and fluoride in your water. So I take most of mine at night.
And there's 60 in the bottle, so I would hope that you would take it before 18 months. But that is our go-to favorite because it's amazing how well you feel taking it. And I did well with the Innate, and many of you have out there and that is a wonderful product as well. This one is just taking it to a whole new level, and I could not believe it. So,
and financially, it's still a really good investment.
It's actually a better investment than it's saving you some money. So we're doing that as well. But I wanted to mention that's why that one's there. So, Dr. Lewis, we're coming to the end of the show, unfortunately, and this really goes by fast. Is there anything that you would like to add in to help people realize that they can have a life worth living and feel good?
Yeah, I'm always full of Stevenisms, and people say, you should write that down. I said, well, you're impressed by it. You write it down. I think life's too short to be little. You need to go big or go home. One thing I'd like to say is when you really decide to get well, you will, because decisiveness is magnetic. So, always be good to other people. Always remember, outside the will of God, there's nothing you want. Inside the will of God, there's nothing I fear. So if you fear your health, come on in. We'll help you nutritionally. We'll help you spiritually too. I'll put on my cheerleading outfit and help you through it. Life is too short to be little. So, folks, it can be much, much, much better. You can have the pain of change and change for the better, or the pain of staying the same. So let's get well. Let's make it a great life.
And for those of you that can't come on in because you're not in East Texas, you can go on our website to greenwisdomhealth.com, fill out the health survey. We can help you in any state across the United States that you're in. And let's get you started having a life worth living. We'll be here next time on the Green Wisdom Health Show.
Once again, our show has come to an end, but your hope in your health is only beginning. If you or a loved one are in need of a different outcome and are waiting for a brighter future, take the first step and go to our website and fill out the health survey. Please don't keep us a secret. If you know someone that could benefit from this podcast, please share this show with your friends and family. You are only one step away from a life worth living.